Alright, welcome everybody. O-arm training video. I promise this is not as scary of a machine as it looks. So it is housed permanently. So here's the entrance to the OR back there. OR 20 is that way. That's the door to the clean core. 21 is around the corner there. So it's housed right in between and outside the door to the clean core here. We keep the O-arm plugged in all the time because this thing drains batteries super quickly, and it literally uses up a quarter of the battery reserves, or I guess 20% of the battery reserves, just to drive this machine into the rooms. So whenever you unplug it from the wall, just know that you got 20 good minutes, maximum of 30, before this thing runs out of juice on you. In preparation for any O-arm case, you should always put in 2 C-arm orders. One is for the actual C-arm. They'll use that to find the level of the spine they're working on, or rather confirm the level of the spine they're working on. And then the second C-arm order is for the images your O-arm is going to go under. So for starters, we're going to power up the actual O-arm portion so we can actually drive it, because right now it's dead. So power it on, we hit the power button, press and hold. There you go, and then just wait a sec. Alright, so upon booting up of the O-arm, the brakes is automatically going to be engaged. So hit the alarm reset button, that'll disengage the brakes, and you can actually drive this thing around now. Quick thing to note, make sure the workstation is all the way powered off before you unplug the power cord from the wall. So read all the tape warnings, they actually do matter. So if you unplug the power cord from the wall while this thing is still on, or when that thing is almost powered off and it's still beeping blue, you will actually trip a circuit in the monitor, and we have to call engineering to fix it, and they're rather expensive. So before you bring the O-arm into an OR, you want to make sure your C-arm will obviously be on. You'll use that to take some scout shots of the patient first, and then they'll ask you to bring the O-arm, but make sure it's parked as close to the outer double doors as possible, because you need as much room in this area here to park your O-arm after you get in. So our O-arm is booted up now, ready to move. First thing we're going to do is, just like the C-arm, you unplug from the wall before you unplug from each other. And the opposite applies when you're hooking them back up. So I'll see you guys in the room. It doesn't have to be pretty, guys, just get the machine in the room before it runs out of batteries. So I'm going to take the monitor in first, because the O-arm will be closest to the double doors. So you might be wondering, how am I supposed to make this tight U-turn with the thing you park like this? It's not like there's a handle I can turn to move it side to side, right? So it turns out that turning the handle button is this button here. Alright, wait until like 2 seconds after that thing turns solid green before you start to move it. So now we can pull with all our might. This thing actually shifts side to side now. And we press it again, and then we can drive it like a normal C-arm. Be careful of that handle on the door on the fire extinguisher. If you bump the front end of this gantry too many times, it will break down. This thing's pretty sensitive, even though it looks like a beast. Alright, so we're in the room. Just make sure when you're driving it, take it slowly, especially around turns and corners, and constantly, when you're driving this, right, wag your body side to side as you're driving to make sure you don't run anybody over. Now we're gonna hook the machines to each other and then hook it into the wall before this thing runs out of juice. So for the big cord here, where we hook them to each other, you just match it up best as you can, and it should fit right in, and then clip it in place with this thingy here. Alright, so now we're plugged in. Notice how this thing's green now. And notice how we literally used 20% of the batteries just to get the machine in the door. So that tells you how much battery reserve, or lack thereof, is in here. So now we have to boot up the other half of the machine. What I find that works the best and has the highest chance of success is to power off the O-arm first. So press and hold until it starts blinking. Because if you just hit the on button on the workstation right now, there's a pretty good chance that these two are going to fail to communicate, and you're going to have to redo the process anyways after 20 minutes of waiting. So what I find is if you boot them up simultaneously, then they have a better chance. So what I do is I boot up the workstation first, press and hold, and then within about 10 seconds, you don't have to sprint, power up the O-arm as well. And we're gonna stand here and wait for that reset button to light up, because the booting actually doesn't keep starting until you hit the reset button. So I'm gonna do that. And while we're waiting, it's important to note that you do not want to plug the O-arm, which is in the blue jack, and the C-arm into the same color jack. So notice how in the OR, this is OR21 by the way, the jacks are all different color coded, right? So if you plug the O-arm and the C-arm into the same cluster of jacks of the same color, and this has never happened, but notice how there's some blue jacks and brown jacks and red jacks over here as well, right? So color, don't plug them into the same color, otherwise you will overload the circuit and trip the circuit, and engineering has to come and flip the breaker. Alright, this is going to take a while, guys. The first boot of the day, or the first boot after maybe a week since somebody last used this, is always taking the longest, so feel free to go use the bathroom if you need to. Every successive boot will be a lot faster. So this screen here is what you want to see. If you start seeing a bunch of computer programming language, or the stuff that pops up when you hit command prompt on your computer, that's okay as long as it doesn't stay there for more than 30 seconds. If it does, then cross your fingers you didn't need to do the reboot. So to do the reboot, you can't just, say, screw this thing, it's being mean to me, and I'll just unplug this thing from the wall because it's taking forever to shut down. So, because if you do that, you'll trip the breaker on the monitor and you literally have broken the machine. So if you need to do a reboot, just press and hold the power button again. It will take forever to power off if that's the route it forces you to go. But it'll get there after like 20 minutes. So while we're waiting for the workstation and the rest of this thing to boot, and voila, actually I just finished booting, so green is good on this machine. We can park it as close to that wall as we can, because when the surgery is actually going on, there's going to be a lot more stuff in here. So we'll push it over towards the wall. And then the position it's in right now is called the docking position. So everything is back towards us and down as far as it goes. It's the long-term storage mode, if you will. So there's actually some things called docking pins here. So see those pins? It physically prevents the gantry from sliding forwards and backwards as we're moving. To do that, so I guess the first step of powering up is to raise the gantry. I personally always get these buttons confused with these two buttons. So up, down, boom in, boom out. We're gonna go up here. Just like the C-arm, right? You don't want to pull in with your brakes like this, right? Because then if you pull in too far, you gotta move the whole base to pull back. So you wanna pull in with this maximum leverage as you can. Same thing here, we'll boom out about halfway of its potential. Be careful you don't hit anything on the other side. Yeah, right about there-ish, right? And then we're gonna open the gantries in preparation for pulling in over the patient. To do that, it's this button here, top right. Just hold it down. It might look like there's nothing going on, but eventually this will happen. In general, this machine there's about a 1 or 2 second delay between you pushing the button and the actual action happening. Alright, so when you open it, you want to make sure you open it all the way. Don't just open it halfway. That's not going to work. So by now, our monitor should have fully booted. So this is the hallelujah screen. You're actually able to do stuff now. To pull up your patient, you'll actually go to scheduled exams up here. I'm going to try to make this as HIPAA compliant as I can, but try not to flash anybody's name on the screens. So just trust me, there's some names further that ways. So none of the names you're looking for is actually going to be in there, because this is not a wireless machine. So we'll go to the bottom right, hit work list, and then we'll sort by today, and then modality. I pick RF. XA I think is like cath lab, and IR. CT is obviously CT, just so it gives me a little less stuff to look at. And then if I hit get, that message pops up because I forgot to plug the Ethernet cable hooking the monitor into the PAX jack. So let me do that real quick. So for ORs on the new side here, like 20 through 25, your PAX jack, so that's the little door you come in through, right? That's the door to the sterile corridor there where we parked this O-arm. As soon as you come in, by default, the C-arm should be parked around here. That jack over there is the only one in the room. There might be one on the other side of the room, I'm not sure. That'll be a PAX jack as labeled. So remember, unless it specifically says PAX, it's not connected to PAX. So this orange cord, or it could be a blue cord by the time you use it, is usually wrapped happily here, and it connects down there. Now, if we hit the get button, it should actually bring up a work list. So, voila, 2 of these things came up. Whoever we actually want, we'll click the little check mark just to the left of that guy's name. So, I'm trying to make this HIPAA compliant here. So, that box, hit the check mark, and then hit OK. And now, just take my word for it, we have another entry on the list, and it's the one we just got off the wireless server. We can double click his name, and a couple things on this home screen where we need to do. So we'll pick the name of the surgeon doing the case. If you don't know who the surgeon is, don't worry about it. It's not that big of a deal. However, what must be done is under the navigation connections. By default, it'll be nothing. Here, we have to plug in the cord we used in the PAX jack onto the machine Medtronic has at the foot of the bed. I can't show you guys what that machine looks like, but because I honestly don't know where they keep it on these days. But it'll always be at the foot of the bed, right about here-ish. It's kind of looks like that machine there in height and width. And you'll see some computer screens and fancy keyboard and mouse. But kind of around the, if you're looking at it this way, the right side of the machine, a little higher than waist level, you'll see an Ethernet connection area. There's only like 2 of those ports on the entire machine, so you can't miss it. And it'll be pretty obvious which one's the telephone wire and which one's the internet wire. So plug that into that machine, and you want to make sure that it's plugged into this machine before you do the O-arm spin. That's very important. It's unfixable if you mess that part up. So once you get it off, get the work list off PAX, it's a good idea to just leave this cord plugged into Medtronic's machine until the end of the case. If we were actually connected, you'll hit change here, and instead of saying no servers found, it'll actually say stealth med or med stealth. So highlight med stealth whenever it shows up here, click OK, and then after you click OK, it should say med stealth in capital letters right here. So after all that, you've done all your setup, you can just hit accept, and voila, this is your default kind of like your C-arm screen. You got one monitor here, one monitor here. So from this point on, we'll set up some stuff in preparation for our 3D spin. Right now you're on 2D mode. I wouldn't mess with the noise reduction or any of this stuff too much, because I actually did it once and the C-arm images look like a snowstorm. So low dose, feel free to turn that on. Lasers, there is lasers, but I never actually seen it work on a live patient, as in the lasers are there, I just can't see them. Either because of where they were installed on the machine or whatever, but just after the drapes you can't really see your lasers. So we're going to pull in over the bed now to demonstrate the rest of this. Or actually, before we do that, we can set up our 3D parameters while we're waiting for the surgeon to tell us to come in. So by default, the patient is supine and facing the foot of the bed. Every O-arm case I've done, they're prone and facing that side of the bed. So we're going to hit this button here until our little mannequin flips into the right orientation. Alright, and I haven't seen them actually use it on C-spine. I've mostly done it on thoracic and lumbar spines. They use this portable CT scanner thing pretty much when they need to fuse multiple levels of the spine, like 4 or 5 levels. This is pretty much just determines how much dose you use. Keep your eye on the mass. So low dose, right? Pretty good. HD, pretty bad. However, a lot of the patients needing these surgeries are hypersthenic, so just keep that part in mind. There's some doctors that'll insist that you use HD and XL on every single patient. Use your own discretion. I find that standard and medium or large will get you there on most people. However, you don't always have the benefit of seeing the patient undraped before the start of the case, so just humor them and do whatever they tell you to do. And the Medtronic rep is the guys that make this machine. He actually knows how to run the machine. His name's Carl. Really nice guy. He pretty much walked me through the first couple times I had to do this by myself. He's a big believer in HD and XL, which does give them pretty awesome images, but unfortunately it also radiates yourself a lot. So right now, we're done setting up. If we actually plugged it into the Medtronic machine, there'll be a little green check mark here instead of the X. If you see this X before the 3D spin, do not spin. Get the Medtronic's rep to fix his side of the deal, because at the moment, well, we'll get there. As you can see, there's a lot of obstacles in the way, right? Potential pitfalls, potential contaminations. So just make sure to either move these yourself or get the surgeons to move the light handles all the way to the head and feet of the bed out of the way. But when you actually have to pull in on a live patient, the bed will be higher than this. If not, make them raise the bed, and it'll not be as clear as this. The patient will be wrapped up in a clear plastic wrap, like a cannoli. Just make sure to either have either a coworker or someone else in the room spot for you as you're pulling in, to make sure you don't hit the bottom of the bed with the gantry. And then definitely get somebody to go on the other side before you close the gantry to make sure you're not going to amputate part of the patient or hit a piece of the arm board. Alright, so close enough, right? Whenever the surgeons are happy with where you're centering on these 2D scouts, they'll say, okay, that's good enough. You'll want to save the image and then hit M1, it memorizes the position of the gantry now, as in forwards, backwards, any tilt you have, and the exact rotation of the tube inside the gantry itself. So now, after we do the AP scout, we have to do the lateral scout to make sure we're centered up and down right. To do that, we rotate our tube manually again. I'd recommend using the top button because this way it swings the blue light back towards you so you can actually see when you're level with the bed. Alright, and it'll actually pause when it reaches more or less straight lateral. So, same drill. We'll take another scout shot. Alright. Since we have the field of view on, we can finagle a little bit, right? There we go. And to do that, I just literally drop the gantry a little bit. So, if they're happy with where you're at on both images, you'll hit M2 to memorize the second position. So it won't actually let you expose or memorize the position if there's a collision zone warning, but just take my word for it, it will light up. So, M2. Alright, voila. And obviously make sure to save your lateral image by pressing the flag key. At this point, you're ready for your 3D spin. You'll see that everybody except the anesthesia guy, or even the anesthesia guy sometimes, definitely you won't be leaving the room, and neither will the Medtronic's rep, but literally everybody else scatters out of the room because they don't want to get radiated. Here is a tip on how to save yourself some radiation. So here is actually a piece of lead-infused plastic. You can feel free to roll this into the room and stand behind it as you're exposing. That'll save you some exposure. It is either in this equipment room for neurosurgery. It's right outside of OR 24. That's the door into the sterile corridor there, and that's the door to the new OR over there. Or you can duck behind the O-arm and hope for the best. So we're going to switch back to 3D mode now for the actual O-arm spin. It is worth asking the doctor if they want a breath hold to decrease motion artifacts, they'll most likely say yes. And as soon as everybody scats, anesthesia flips off the ventilator and ducks behind you. If you can't find that lead shield anywhere, duck down behind the O-arm and then just hold down the eyeball plus button for the 3D spin. So notice how that screen changes when I went to 3D mode. So we'll hold down the button. So each spin is 20 seconds long, so hold on tight for dear life. Alright, now you can let go. So let's do this thing. You can probably tell them to come back, and especially tell anesthesia to come back so the patient doesn't, suffocate. So usually this machine will be parked over there somewhere, and the surgeons will kind of swarm the area for a while. If they say okay, or they say okay, pull out, I always find it's helpful to ask right then and there, because you'll probably never get another chance to, if they want to spin at the end of the surgery, or if they're going to use the O-arm again during the case. If they say yes, just park it on the side of the room. If they say no, probably still best to park it on the side of the room before taking it out, because the guy's spine is open to the air, right? So we want to decrease contamination as much as possible. So to pull out, we first open the gantry, and again, make sure you don't hit any light handles or anything. So just to show you guys a little bit of finished product, right? You can cycle between which projection, where the big yellow box is around, by left clicking. So this is pretty much the axial view on the CT. This is the coronal view. And here you have your sagittal view. So assuming they say this is the only O-arm spin they'll need, your job now is to get this thing back into the docking position and pushed up against the wall. So to do that, there's actually a little shortcut rather than adjusting each of these lengths individually. First, we're going to close the gantry. Again, make sure to double check, because nobody's going to be here to spot for you now. If it's not hovering over a patient. Alright. And then, this is actually called the docking button. So it pretty much retracts all the equipment back to the zero position. And the finished product will be a machine in the parked storage docking mode. And you see the docking pins going into the little groove down there. Alright. So that's pretty much the end. However, you must now decide if you want to send the images in here with this PAX jack, or if you want to wait until you bring the machine back to where we park it and use the PAX jack there. Either way, sending the images will take a good 15 minutes, give or take. The benefit of doing it in here is after you power this thing down, you don't have to power it back on again. However, The drawback is there's going to be a lot of people in here, and if you don't want to particularly be in here any longer than you have to, you can power everything off and wait to do it after the surgery is over. So whichever method you decide, you will go through the following steps. You'll plug the orange cord into the PAX jack. You'll hit escape. Brings back this screen here. We'll hit dose, and voila, the dose page pops up. Notice, right, it only shows you the milligrays of the regular fluoro and the milligrays of the 3D spin. It shows you the time of the regular fluoro, but it does not show you the time in seconds of 3D spins, because each 3D spin is 20 seconds precisely. So when you're outing this on RadNet, you're going to have to do a little math. You add up the milligrays here in total, in addition to the total milligrays of the 3D spins. And then you add up the time, whatever it is here total, plus 20 seconds for each spin. It's not uncommon to do 2 spins or more, depending on the case you're in. So after you hit the dose button there, click save and close, and then we'll go back up to the saved exams tab, and here's our boy on the marker we just scanned. To select these, you can either select the first one and hit shift and then click on the last image, or you can hit control and select whichever ones you want to save. Afterwards, after you select all you want to send, hit the send to button. We'll actually go to McKesson. Make sure you check the box that says send coronals and sagittals. If you don't, after I select the 3D spin here. If you don't, you're going to have to reformat the 3D coronals and sagittals on McKesson, which is just a couple more mouse clicks, whereas this is just one extra click. So make sure you're sending it to McKesson instead of Terracon. Don't mess with any of the other settings up here. Don't anonymize it or anything like that. And then just hit the send button, and there'll be a green progress bar that pops up, and it'll let you know when it's done. So after it's done sending, you can hit new down here and it'll ask you if you really want to quit. Yes. It'll bring up a fresh screen, but you don't physically have to do that if you're just going to power down and drag it out of the room anyways, after you send your images. So now we're going to power down everything, make sure this thing is in the docking position. We'll power this down before we unplug it from the wall. Make sure that blue light stops blinking before you yank the cord, because otherwise you will trip that circuit, and it's an expensive fix. Not only that, you'll also ruin any chance of anybody else using this machine probably for the rest of the day. Alright, so I just heard the beep, and then that thing finally stopped blinking. So now, notice there's no blue lights. No blue lights. Now you're safe to unplug from the wall and take it outside to our parking spot. Again, try not to take forever. You get 30 minutes max before you have to push this hunk of metal using no motor. And of course, unplug from the wall and then unplug from each other, same as the C-arm. So it's always annoying when these automatic doors close on me in the middle of the move. So what you can do is on the top here, I just tripped the motionless sensor there. You can set the setting to open, and the door will just stay open forever. Just make sure you switch the setting back to on when you're done. when parking this back, you can kind of use that trash can as a reference. Make sure to leave at least that trash can's width from the door, and that's sensor, I guess. And voila, there you have it. We can probably drive it up a little more after we get the workstation over there, but that's the gist of it. Alright, and there you have it, back to how we found it, more or less. Just as a quick reminder, hook them together before you hook it up into the wall. Some people even take it a step further in being caring for their coworkers and hook up the internet jack as well to the PAX port here. This way, whenever somebody boots it up, they can just refresh the work list then and there. However, you're like, how can I possibly ever remember everything you just said in this video? Fear not. Here's a color illustrated guide created by none other than Becky the Great. It literally covers everything we just went over, and it's kept all the time on the O-arm right here. So feel free to refer to it even in the middle of the case, though I encourage you to print your own version from departmental data and mark it up, write whatever notes you need on that, and take it with you for the cases, because as you can see, it's kind of wearing down over the years. But what you must remember for the O-arm, if you take nothing else away, is to make sure you plug it back in after you use it, otherwise this thing will run out of batteries. And always, 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 never unplug the monitor, the workstation here, from the wall when it's still turned on. And before you do the 3D spin, make sure that orange cord or whatever covered cord linking the workstation and the Medtronic machine is plugged into each other before you do the 3D spin. Otherwise, you pretty much did the spin and there's no way we can transfer the images from here onto their monitor or onto their Medtronic machine. You're like, so why can't they just look at this monitor here during the surgery? So it turns out the whole point of this was so that they can see exactly how deep into the bone their instruments are going as they're doing the surgery. That's the whole point of this. There's actually sensors that will be on the patient's spine as you're doing the 3D spin. So that's how they're able to call this a navigated scan, because after you pull the machine out, just based off of this scan and that sensor they have on the guy's spine, they can see exactly how deep their screws are going and if it's about to poke on the nerve or anything. So that just about covers it, and of course if there's anything gets dirty, make sure you clean it up. But that's it, guys. Just if you're the last person to use it, or if there's no more O-arm cases, make sure to trim both parts off. And if you have any questions or concerns, please feel free to ask me or somebody else who knows how to use the O-arm, and we'll make sure to get you an answer.